Not many people know that sea coral is in fact a critter. Dr. Camilla Floros is a scientist at the Oceanographic Research Institute in Durban.
Corals are actually animals. A lot of people think they're rocks or they're plants, but coral is a really tiny little animal that looks like an anemone. It lives in a hard shell, and corals live together, and then many colonies form a coral reef.
She took us to see a coral colony that has formed on a man-made pier at the mouth of Durban's busy harbour.
We have these corals that have adapted to our urban environment, and they are attracting all this biodiversity around them. So they're fantastic, amazing little creatures.
The coral on this pier is home to a variety of fish, urchins and algae. Crabs help clean the coral reef by eating dead animals and little pieces of food dropped by other critters.
Now that coral is like a foundation species. Those critters will form food for bigger critters, and those critters will form food for even bigger critters. And so you work through the food chain. So they're very, very important. Without them, there would be no big critters.
Unfortunately, corals in urban environments are vulnerable to many threats, like pollution, reduced sun penetration, and a lot of sediment churned up by human activities. And then there's fishing.
Coming up behind us, you'll see some fishermen, and that's one of the threats facing the coral and other marine life along the North Pier. What happens is when the guys are fishing, their fishing gut and their spark plugs and their tackle gets snared around the coral. It entangles the coral, and it can actually cause growth defects, disease. It lets disease come into the tissue of the coral. The other problem is that when the guys will try and retrieve their tackle, which is tangled around the coral, they break the coral. So that's really, really unfortunate. And of course, coral is very slow growing, so that coral will die once it's been torn off its little patch.
The tackle left behind can also cause what is known as ghost fishing.
And ghost fishing is when they're not targeting a specific fish, but the fish come along and they get tangled in the tackle that is left behind. And that kills indiscriminately. It can kill shrimps, it can kill crabs, and other marine life.
An estimated 10% of the world's coral reefs are dead, and at least 60% are under threat. Thankfully, 100% of all South Africa's naturally occurring coral reefs between Cape Vidal and Mozambique are in a marine protected area.
They're subtropical coral reefs, so they're not the same as the Mauritian coral reefs or the Kenyan coral reefs. They're a little bit deeper, but we still have a very high biodiversity.
These big reefs attract bigger creatures like green sea turtles and moray eels that use their sharp teeth to eat fish and crustaceans. Octopus hide in the coral's crevices waiting to grab passing prey. Sharks will also patrol looking for a meal. These predators often eat slow or sick fish, which prevents disease outbreaks on the reef. But Camilla says you don't have to be a scuba diver to get close to sea critters. A visit to the beach can reveal wonders. This is the tidal pool at Sharkers Rock, north of Durban.
I think if you go more in the sandy environments, you're not going to see a hell of a lot because there's not a lot of place for the fish to hide, or a lot of habitat. That's quite a barren environment. But if you go to places where there are rocky shores, then you're going to have a lot more fish, a lot more crabs, hermit crabs, and that's where you have the things like the starfish, and they're definitely little fish, little mullet, little gobies. So there's a lot that people won't see if they're swimming above, but there's a lot going on under the water.
We asked people enjoying a day at the pool what they had seen.
I saw seashells and corals.
Lots of underwater creatures, coral, different colors. When you are snorkeling in the water, or if you go into the rock pools and there's coral around, don't kick the coral, don't stand on the coral, don't break off a piece of coral to take home. That coral is providing an ecosystem for so many different species. So by breaking that coral, you actually are denying and taking some other little creatures home.
And don't litter.
Anything that you throw in the center in the urban environment will end up from the gutters going into the ocean. And the plastic packets will be eaten by the turtles because they look like jellyfish. And it will wrap around other marine creatures, it will foul up, get tangled, so don't litter. That's the biggest thing that people can do to not impact their marine environment.
Just because sea creatures are often out of sight doesn't mean they should be out of mind.